1913 when it all began. Some high-ranking man hatched a secret plan. It seems since then it's handmade for tyrants. Meet the creature born on Jeckyl Island, and they tried to sell ya, but I got to tell ya, the Morgans, the Warburgs, and the Rockerfellers, it's a war racket through the Banking Act, the same year that they brought in the income tax. And without that, the government never had the funds for the bombs and guns to fight World War I. And still today we never learned our lesson. It was the Fed that brought on the Great Depression and every panic without exception. These days they prefer to call it a recession. We could reject them at the next election, but with no deception, it's a true correction. Wartime spending, it's a long time standing. Welfare, warfare, say expand. It's not a left-right issue, that's a tissue of lies. The president's a puppet with his strings disguised. When the people wake up, they demand action. Gonna slay the monster like Andrew Jackson. They don't ask for your taxes, and that's the main thing. Fascist, socialist, it's really the same thing. Underestimate the masses, that's your downfall. It's not an AstroTurf town hall. They got the gall, let's call it fascism, Nazi Pelosi, Obamunism. It's a joke, I hope you notice something. The auto bailout is cash for clunkers. Seeing green shoot signs, the recession's ending. Congressional sessions bringing on the depression, saying, and the Fed, and the Fed. Coin gold and silver when the Fed is dead. A free market money, what the founders meant. The best way to reign in the government. And the Fed, and the Fed. Hear what I'm saying, heard what I said? If we don't heed the warning, where we gonna head? $10 million for a loaf of bread? Since the Fed's creation, the dollar has lost 95% of its value through inflation. The boom-bust cycle was a thing of the past. We were told it could never happen like that ever again. And then the bottom fell out, the $10 trillion bailout. You better get your wheelbarrow out of the garage because you're gonna need it. Better plant your garden seeds if you plan on eating. And they tried to blame the meltdown on the greedy walking tall Wall Street traders getting drunk. But who was at the bartending buying rounds? Who served? The central bank and the Federal Reserve. In the old days they had a bowl of dust. These days we got a belt of rust and a boom and bust, buying broken trusts. Let the banks fail, leave them belly up. Fraudulent fractions, currencies elastic, economic magic, the whole story's tragic. Spiraling debt as the size unfurled, the bubble that broke the world. The Fed drives a wedge in savings and investment, poor prosperity through deficit spending. Greenspan guarantees it's about inflow. Helicopter Bernanke broken discount window. Call the witch doctor. I don't wanna hear it. John Maynard Keynes and his animal spirit start a Tea Party campaign for liberty. Blood of tyrants and patriots at the Liberty Tree. There's a freedom movement, a second revolution. You ought to learn the truth, and what's the solution? Audit the Fed and then end it, folks. At the Freedom Rally, burning dollar bill notes, chances. And the Fed, and the Fed. The mask comes off and the veil is shed. Not so long ago it seemed nobody cared. Now we got them running scared. And the Fed, and the Fed. The empire's naked and the king is dead. Stand tall, Ron Paul, you should be proud. We heard your voice coming clear and loud.
My guess is that in the next year or two, the economy will get weaker and weaker. We're going to get poorer and poorer, and we are going to be challenged. But our numbers will continue to grow. Who would have ever thought that the monetary issue would have gotten this much attention if we'd have been talking about this 2 years ago? In Washington, it seemed like I was the only one thinking about sound money in the Federal Reserve and all this. So it was there that once I brought up the subject of the Federal Reserve, the crowd burst out about ending the Fed, and they started burning Federal Reserve notes, and I knew the world has changed.
And the Fed, and the Fed. Coin gold and silver when the Fed is dead. A free market money, what the founders meant. The best way to reign in the government. And the Fed, and the Fed. The mask comes off and the veil is shed. Not so long ago it seemed nobody cared. Now we got them running scared.
Activists believe the Federal Reserve Bank is responsible for the current financial crisis. They claim government bailouts will further disrupt the economy and plunge the nation into a severe depression. They support legislation introduced by Representative Ron Paul to shut down the nearly century-old Federal Reserve.